hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Sweet. All right. Let's see. It's 3:10 now, Eastern time. So this is a different format than most AMAs we do. It's more of a community brainstorm session rather than a, hey, I have things I want to just announce. But at the same time, we will be calling people up onto the stage to hear people's thoughts and questions and concerns as we go. I shared a link just now to a document that I'll be working off of. This is really a working session. So this is me saying, hey, I have these ideas and I want to hear what people's thoughts are about these ideas and see what things are concerns or questions and basically figure out what the best thing to do is. And I think the more brains we get into one room, the closer we can get to a ideal solution. That's always been my approach to things. So yeah, with that in mind, this will be a different format. So just bear with us. This is the first time we've really tried something like this. And if you can't see the document, that's because we can't share our screen here. But if you go check the announcements channel, I just dropped a link in there. And perhaps we can drop another link in the AMA Voiceless chat real quick. I'll just...
Already done.
Of course. You guys are on it. So thank you for that. We'll see how many people Google Docs allows to see the same document at the same time. We'll see. Hopefully it works out. But yeah, so to give some context on this, since the start of DFK, we've had an approach of this is a game that is very different from any other game that's been built before. This is a game where the players can really have ownership of the game in a very real and literal sense and can have a say in how that game builds things. Like we have the portal where we have the voting. We just added the feature now that if you own heroes, you can have votes for your heroes. If you own X tools, you can have some votes for your X tools. And so it's this whole new concept where we as a team are creating sort of the new features and things that are on the roadmap, but we are servants to you, the community, to build what is best for the community and for the project. And this is a step on that road. So let me see. I'm just kind of planning to go through this. But to give a little bit more context, from the very start, we wanted to build a system that is open. The blockchain itself is a decentralized open system where anybody can come and build things on top of this platform. And you don't have to necessarily trust or know who's building it because the code speaks for itself. It's a trustless environment that's decentralized. There's no controlling authority. Now, as a game, that's tricky, because you do have to have a group that kind of is, this is the accepted rules that we as a group are going to agree on for this game, especially at the early stages where there's not a ton of community at the very start. So a lot of the seed for the game and the idea and the direction has to start off in a somewhat centralized way. But as we grow more and start to become larger and larger in terms of the team and in terms of the community, we have the opportunity to expand on that and build on that and have it start to become more and more decentralized as well and have the community have more of a say in things. We started out having very open and public APIs where you could get a lot of really rich and really raw data about our game and about the activities that are going on in our game. And that was for the intent to encourage other people to come and build things on top of and around our ecosystem so that we could see things like DFK Tavern and DFK Wiki and a bunch of other tools that were getting built to add richness to the project and to the ecosystem. And that is one thing that I really love about some of the other projects I've seen in the past. Even just regular games that aren't decentralized, you'll see all kinds of community tools that will be created by community members and build up around it. And the blockchain really presents a cool opportunity where we can push that even further and do things that no one has ever thought of or tried before. And one of those things is like the metaverse idea where I have my in-game assets that are NFTs that I control and I have ownership of. And the game itself shouldn't be able to just say, I'm going to change something unilaterally and change how you want or how your assets actually function or impact the value of them or anything like that. It's this whole new concept that we're trying to build. So with that in mind, we had some ideas of how do we encourage other people to come and build around our ecosystem? One of those was having APIs that are open with like lots of raw data. Another one from early on that we were talking about was the ability to have a grant system in place. And it was inspired by some of the ones we saw from Harmony and Avalanche and others out there, where these networks have basically figured out that like having their like network is nice, but increasing the value of that network is something that can be increased as more and more people are encouraged and incentivized to come build on that network. And I see DFK as sort of its own network in a sense, where it's basically like we're building a platform and a ecosystem that we want other people to come build on top of. So the grant system was built to address that and to say, let's put our money where our mouth is and let's create a grant system where other people can come and apply and say, hey, I have this idea, but I need some funding to build it. And so here's my proposal. And then have the system in place for that to get looked at and approved by the team and by the community, and have some back and forth and try to figure out what people want. And then if it's approved, if it's not. But that whole system in place there allows and encourages some of those smart builders out there to come and build on top of it. So stepping through this document, hopefully you guys can see my cursor. I'll try to stick it at the place where I'm going to be speaking from. But as more features get added to the game and into the like ecosystem, our heroes and our other assets will gain more utility and therefore will have higher value. That's, I guess, one of the theses that I'll be like working off of here. And I think we can all agree on that. As there's more things for you to do with those, there's more opportunities for those to have higher value. Okay. I just got 2 missed calls from my wife. Hold on 1 second, you guys. Okay, sorry guys, that was only my daughter has a fever at school, but my wife is on it. She's the best. And we'll continue here, real life. So the next thesis here, right? As players have more choices of what they want to do with their heroes and other assets, there will also be increased demand for those assets. Basically, if I had the US dollar and I'm only able to spend it at one store, it's not going to be very valuable. But if I can have that have like value across many different stores across the whole country, I liken that to saying our assets can have utility and value across many different projects, across many different chains. And that is the whole idea there with basically adding utility to that. Let's see. We also would like to encourage developers and builders to build around the ecosystem that we're building. I went into this earlier with the grant system and the APIs and stuff like that. And I guess there's a point here to also talk about Metcalfe's law, which has been brought up a lot specifically with crypto, where like the Bitcoin network was said, okay, every person who becomes a new node in the Bitcoin network increases the value of that network by a certain amount. And it's this whole idea of like, how do you peg a value to a network? So basically, as we get more and more things being built for our network, as we get more and more users, but also as we get more and more options for our heroes to have, the value of that network will increase. So just a little thesis there. Let's see. So some of the questions, right? How can we best incentivize the builders to come and build? I think if we provide them tools and data and integrations, that's the best way to get them to come and say, hey, I have this idea and it might be crazy, but if I could get some data and some like integrations out of it, I could build something really cool. So trying to figure out what tools we want to build and give to people to be able to build on top of our ecosystem is a big part of this as well. So that gets us to the proposal. So basically the proposal here is that we've had things up until now with open APIs and data that have encouraged a lot of people to come and build. We also have a grant program right now, which is also helping with that. What else can we do? One idea that I had was we're on the blockchain. We could build a smart contract interface that will allow other smart contracts that have been approved and have been like fully audited and all that stuff to have a very limited access to interact with our heroes on the blockchain in terms of spending stamina or spending HP and MP or reading the values of their stats or even like earning things inside of our like earning XP or earning, I don't know, like items and things in the future as well. So there's this whole idea of we could let other people create cool things that would let our players have more choices of what to do with their hero. And if we set specific rules in place in terms of what you can gain from what you can spend, as long as those rules are consistent with what is also set internally, we can control the like narrative of that and ensure that it's always something that is like always like in balance, basically. So that's the proposal. And that's the thing that I said at DFK Day over in Denver. And I said it on a couple AMAs to allude to this, but we haven't really put out a hard and fast, like here's the actual interface, because we don't really know exactly what that's going to look like yet. This is still just an idea at this point. But from a technical standpoint, these things are possible. We just have to figure out from our side, do we want to do it? And if we do, what would that look like? And what would those controls be? So that kind of comes back to the concerns and the questions part here. And I've heard some concerns from some people. I think, let's see, looking at the chat here, Metes might be on. He had some concerns. He likes to come to these and ask questions, and I would really appreciate hearing his opinions on these things as well. He might have already raised his hand, probably. Let's see. Show requests. Ogre Broad has his hand up. Some others, there he goes. Metes is there. This is the part where I want to open up the floor, and I want to hear from people and see, what are your thoughts about this? Is there flaws in any of the like groundwork up here with the purpose and the theses about how this could help the system? And then what are some concerns that we have about a system like this forward? So I'll get into that in a second and call up Ogre to the stage. But first of all, just some of the questions that I thought of were, what kinds of controls will be put in place to ensure that this is governed properly? And then how can we ensure that it's like secure? Obviously, that's the very highest of our priorities, is to make sure everything is always 100% like secure and bulletproof. How would a project get approved to be able to have access to interact with these NFTs? And what ongoing control would we have? So those are some of the questions, but let's have a quick break because I've been speaking for about 15 minutes straight, and I'm sure you guys are sick of hearing my voice. But Ogre looks like he's up already. Ogre, you want to go ahead?
Hey, apologies on the reception. I'm picking my son from school, so hopefully it stays good, but there's a bad spot in here.
Sounds great so far.
All right, good stuff. Real quick, I just wanted to say that I love the fact that you're focusing on each game that ties in meeting some sort of cost to earnings ratio, because that was one of my biggest concerns when you talk about growing the economy is, how is that going to affect the economy, right? Are they going to be a drain? Are they going to be an asset, as well as a balance of the heroes, right? We don't want to, there's already bots enough. We don't want to create a vulnerability with adding a new game to where there's a new attack vector for bots to drain the funds out of the prize pool or something like that. So I love the way you guys are going with it.
Yeah, no, excellent points there. And I'm also like adding these notes here into this document. I hope you guys don't mind if I add your names to some of these points, but like this is like a brainstorming session that we want to get and hear other people's ideas and feedback on. So added a couple lines there for you. Is there anything else that you'd like to say for that?
No, that pretty much covers that, I do believe.
Yeah,
I appreciate the time, and thank you guys for your hard work.
No problem. Appreciate you too as well. Just a quick thing to speak to that, like the vulnerability part, like we for sure, like that's the highest priority. We don't want to make anything that would add extra attack vectors there. And so that's why it would be creating a whole new smart contract that would basically have very well-defined and well-limited access to very specific things. And of course, it would be audited and all that stuff. So excellent point there. And then having the earnings like ratio with the cost there, like hard coded, so that it's not something that can be passed in. It's not something that can be changed. It's a thing that would be set at the very start in stone. So like, here's the upper limit of what's possible. And that upper limit would always be lower than what they could get from elsewhere in like the core game. I think that's really important too, because we want to ensure that our players aren't ever feeling like they have to go to any of these other things in order to get the full experience or in order to get the most out of their assets. They should always just see these as more of extra things that they can do if they want to, but they aren't ever feeling, oh, I have to do this in order to keep up with other people. So that's an excellent point there too.
Something else real quick, if I could, before I jump off. I don't know how many people have done the math on how long it takes you to get a hero, regardless of its generation, from level 1 to level 100. But it's years with the current XP schedule. So in my mind, building the ecosystem out and adding games like this where we can have additional ways to gain experience for our heroes is definitely a good thing. It adds more versatility and more diversity to the ecosystem. So I love it. Thank you. We obviously have to do it carefully, and I'll have a good one. We're in good hands in my mind.
Metez, thanks for coming up. How's it going?
Hey, hi. First of all, I really want to thank you for taking the time to do this. I said it in the chat already, but this is an incredible thing that you're doing, being so transparent and opening the discussion. I think that's really crazy that you're doing this. So I'm incredibly thankful, but I have a few things that I'm wanting to talk about. Not everything, obviously, but there are two, let's say, main topics that I would like to talk to you about, or at least ask your opinion on. And maybe the first one isn't really about the implementation of the projects that you are talking about, because I 100% agree with your vision here. But I am a bit worried, let's say, about, we're already discussing now the practical implementations and the guidelines and the rules that need to be set. But maybe before we even touch on that, we need to somehow, or at least the team maybe needs to somehow think about or address when a project actually gets approved for a public vote. And why do I say this? It's maybe perhaps because the project that has currently been proposed feels a bit rushed somewhat, in the sense that a lot of specific or needed information for a public vote seems to be missing from the information that we already have at this point. Specifically, for example, it can be smaller things, like in their proposal, even in their updated proposal, I don't see any models or estimations for how they might achieve their estimated overhead. I'm not talking about whether the size of the overhead is correct or not. That's a discussion for experts. But they've set their overhead, and I don't see anywhere in their proposal how they aim to achieve that with the percentage that they take. For example, another thing that perhaps was missing was the internal discussion with you guys about how they would use DFK mechanics, for example. I'm not here to critique the proposal, because I think that has been done and dusted, and you guys have looked at it and you've corrected it in a lot of ways. But the question is more general, in that we, in my eyes at least, and this is a personal opinion, need a very strong way and very clear guidelines on what a proposal needs to reach as a minimum before it can even be allowed to reach a public vote. And I'm not sure if this is the place to discuss that. I just wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, so I'm over here trying to take notes. I go. Not sure if you can see that, but yeah, no, those are excellent points. There should be a sort of like a minimum sort of like requirement for proposals before they're put up to the community. And we've approached it that way up until now with that in mind. And actually, like Sunbear and team have reached out and like worked with people, in particular with DFK Arena, which I think is our first and currently only one that's up there, although we've received, 50 proposals or something. So they're currently like working with these people, but we have actually reached out to them to refine some of these proposals. But at the same time, this is our first one. And a lot of the things about what could be possible is still unknown. And we're still trying to figure that out. And that's part of why we're doing this meeting, actually, is to say, like, what do we want to allow projects to be able to do? And what is okay for them to propose and what is not okay for them to propose. And I think you made some excellent points here about ensuring that there's estimates and charts and things in place to show and to like back up why they're asking for certain things. So excellent points there.
Sorry if I continue on this horse, but for me, the point isn't necessarily about what projects can propose, because I think you're absolutely right that we want to create an open ecosystem. I think the issue is more that at which stage can proposals or can projects be allowed to go to the community vote. As in, at which level do you guys, as a developing team, allow a project to get your support? As in, this sounds really stupid, but you guys have been like exploded into this, let's call it as it is, a multi-million business venture at this point. So any proposal that gets your suggestion to get a community vote already has your support in the public eye. So I think that somehow there needs to be a very clear, strict set of rules, and you can keep this set of rules internally. I'm not proposing here that the community knows all of the guidelines that you guys have, but they need to be very stringent in such a way that if the community votes yes, that there is no doubt on your heads in what aspect whatsoever that it could be a good project, not just that it's potentially a good project, if you get what I'm saying.
Yes, that's very true. Any proposals that we have worked with and said, let's adjust it. And actually, this is exactly essentially what happened with this one as well, was it starts out as, hey, I have this idea. And we say, okay, let's see what things with that we are okay with, what things we aren't okay with, and refine it to a point where this is at the point where we want to start to open it up now and see what other people in the community think. Because as I said, like, we want to involve the community more and more with these types of things and have it be more decentralized. It's also important to like remember that stuff like this, like with these grants, it's not necessarily seen as like this is all they need to build the full thing. It's more about this is a thing to get it started or to get the ball rolling. And it's not like we're trying to do some kind of angel investing or have ownership of this project or a lot of control or oversight over how they run things. It's more about, we think that your idea has some merit and some value and could provide value to the assets. And because of that, we would be willing to offer a grant of X amount. But it's not necessarily us saying we are like sticking our sort of like stamp of like, we 100%, how to say this? It's not our team building it still. So it's a third party thing. We think it has merit, but it's also not something that's going to be necessarily a part of the FK core experience. It's still an external experience.
I'm actually really happy to hear you say that. And maybe just, and this is a personal thought, this is just personal, but perhaps if you want to really make it decentralized at that stage, you could make very clear statements about what exactly your endorsement means, also what it should mean to the community. And you could even consider adding community votes at different levels and be extremely clear and transparent about what the community is voting on exactly. The way you phrase it right now, as in, what does it mean that we accept a public vote for this? What does it mean if the community vote yes? Will this project then go through another round of internal discussions with you guys or not? Will the community have to vote again at a later stage? Make it extremely clear what people are voting.
I for sure agree with that. I don't think that it would only have one vote. I think a lot of these projects might end up having like stages that they'll have to pass through. And some of those stages might be votes, and it might have to pass through multiple votes in terms of, is it qualified for a grant? Yes or no? And then would we like want them to have access to do certain things within the integration? Yes or no? And trying to figure out what the order of those votes would be and like what the order of the phases would be is one of those things that we're starting to feel out with this as our first experiment here. So we are learning as we go, but we have a pretty good idea and we have some really skilled people that are in there right now. And so it's just one of those things that we'll do the process, we'll see what worked well and what didn't, and we'll improve on it each time that we do it and just iterate on that.
Absolutely. I'm so you can't understand how relieved I am to hear you say that on live stage, so everyone in the community can hear this. This is really an incredible viewpoint of the team to take. I had one second topic, if that's fine with you, and then I'll cut off stage so other people can talk about. It's about the way you were talking to if we let some third parties interact with the specific attributes of a hero's NFTs or for other in-game assets, as in specifically, if we try to balance out how external games or external systems can affect the internal systems. For example, experience. And let's zoom in on experience. On the back end, I've been trying to reverse engineer all of your guys' mechanics and trying to balancing it out. And it's incredible to see how well you've thought this through and how everything is interconnected. But what I'm worried about a little bit is that it's very difficult to balance such a very complex system in one simple formula. For example, zooming in on the XP ratio, in the current game, heroes have a lot of different ways to already obtain experience, and the experience gained per stamina spent isn't always the same. For example, heroes with a higher skill level in every profession skill get better drop rates and therefore have a better chance at getting higher experience drops per stamina spent. If that same hero gets sent to a different quest, for example, some player might want to send his gardeners to send them gold mining because it might be more profitable for them, those heroes will receive less experience per stamina spent, but they will receive higher profit, perhaps. I'm not sure how all of the balances work out exactly, but nothing of this is linear. Add to this fact that probably different quests will launching soon or soonish. Quests like PvP and PvE, who will potentially have different experience rates per stamina spent, different profession levels, which will hopefully or maybe also have different experience per stamina spent because the hero has a higher level. How can external games or external systems, for example, DFK Arena, ever hope to achieve the same level of distinction between heroes? It will, in my mind at least, because it's such a complex system, always leave room open for abuse. For example, certain low-level heroes might gain a bit more AXP per stamina in DFK Arena because they might have to do opportune quests in the home game. Or higher level heroes might get a bit less experience per stamina, therefore affecting the financial models that DFK Arena would have set up, therefore giving the grant to a system that isn't really incentivizing people to come play there. So I think it's really difficult to just balance it out in a general method of, well, we'll just say you get as much experience per stamina, because that's also not really the case in the original DFK game.
Yeah, okay. So if I'm hearing the concern correctly, it's like we have a very fine balance that we've struck internally. And honestly, this is true. Hubert spends a lot of time with his team ensuring that everything is very carefully put into balance. Is introducing external things like that going to throw off some of that balance, I think is what I'm hearing. Could it be that heroes might be able to earn more XP in these external ones than they could internally in comparison with other heroes that might have other stats or higher level? And for me, it could be answered very simply in all of these integrations is a very low return on like reward by definition. Like our players will have options to do more with their heroes, and we want to throw these other projects alone in. So like we would like there to be more stuff that your players could actually gain inside of the system, but it'll always be much less. And I say much less in terms of it could even be lower than half as much as what they could get from inside the game for that same amount of stamina spent. And from where I'm standing, that is fine because it's really just a way to give a nod to these other projects and say, if you want to build something cool, like some kind of like rock, paper, scissors game, and have the heroes come and spend stamina to participate in it, a lot of the players are heading there for other reasons than XP. That's not the main draw. It's hey, I would like to try this out. It's curiosity, or I'd like to compete and see if I can beat my friends, or whatever that is. And so having them earn XP from that is like icing on top, and it's not the meat of it though. It's like a very small amount. So there's enough of a buffer there that it will never get close to being higher than what they could earn from the internal game, if that makes sense. That's my current like plan for that.
Yes, Frisky, that's actually a bit what I was expecting to hear, and it's also a bit what I wanted to hear, because I have a follow-up on, in my mind, why this doesn't really make sense to do as a project. As in essence, you're saying that whatever third project will exist might be able to edit the hero's values, but will never reach the same optimal levels of XP per stamina spent or whatever mechanic there is as you can achieve in the original DFK game. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct under the current proposal that I'm basically doing here. That's the vision that I'm putting forth, in that we want other people to be able to integrate and have options to add icing on top of their experiences that they're also building, that would just add extra little things for players to have, but not be able to compete with the main game in any way.
Okay, so if we would take that and go forward, the issue then for me personally becomes that players would have to essentially choose between doing something external, which is less optimal for the hero to progress. So it essentially devalues their time spent or stamina spent because they could do better in the original game, therefore not providing as much value for the third-party project. Or it also a bit devalues the grants that we give them. For example, if we do an alternate hypothesis, or if we run with the system that you're saying, we would then allow heroes to gain optimal XP per stamina in our original game, but in DFK Arena, they would have to also spend stamina, but gain less results than they would have gotten in the original game. Therefore, people would not be incentivized to go to DFK Arena, and that would probably mess with their physical model, with their financial models. So we're actually giving a grant to a system that is doomed to fail in the offset because we're not allowing them the same level. And then if this is true, then why allow them to, or not allow, why is it needed for them to modify the heroes at all? Wouldn't they be better off to just not allow them to spend stamina and allow the heroes to gain some sort of betting system or anything else that allows people to interact with those games in between the questing that they do in the main game? So they just spend their stamina in the main game, get the EXP, and then they do different things with maybe attributes or maybe systems that are built into the third-party systems that is completely separate from the original game. Because we are disbalancing it. We are either giving advantage to DFK or we are allowing abuse. And I just don't see the reasoning why they would need to modify hero attributes.
I think, to your point, there are some projects where it won't make sense. In fact, probably a lot where it just wouldn't make sense to do that. And I actually think the particular one you're referring to, they updated their proposal to actually remove that because they said, you know what, that's not something for us. And that's fine. But there are other projects where they might have something in their system where they're providing extra value from inside of their ecosystem. Let's say somebody else makes a game and they want to onboard a lot of players. So they say, hey, if you have a DFK hero, you can come here and do and spend their stamina and earn things in our game, like over there in the other project. Then they might want to have that be set so that you have to spend stamina so you can't do a lot of it all at once. So that might be something that they choose to do. I'm just saying there could be certain projects where it does make sense. And
yes,
so that's
Frisky, I agree, but you're missing something here. If you're saying, let's let heroes spend stamina and gain something else in the external system there, by definition, everything in crypto can be valued against each other. What you're doing then is you're putting external value on the EXP that heroes gain. For example, I build a game, players can come there, they can spend stamina, and I give them, 10 metas coins for every stamina spent. That means that by definition, these 10 metas coins are equal to the value of the EXP that would be gained in the game because the value is equal. And by pure method of arbitrage, the systems will become balanced. So I think it's very dangerous to just say we'll allow people to spend the same materials that would be spendable in DFK and think that they can't be connected in any way. Arbitrage works cross-chain. That's the entire foundation of why Crystalville will be such a great success in my mind, because arbitrage is a thing. Things will be balanced out.
Yeah, so could it result in unexpected or unforeseen things? I think to a certain extent, like, we can't see the future of what could be built and what kind of opportunities could come about. When Ethereum was created, like, it's just saying, hey, let's create this platform and see what people build on top of it. And we've seen so many amazing things. It's the same thing with the internet when it was created. A lot of people were like, so what? I can have a computer here, speak with a computer there. But now everything is built on it. I think as long as we set the rules in place such that you can always get more XP for the amount of stamina in-game than you could outside of the game, I don't see how that could be abused. And really, it's up to the players to choose. Do they want to have their heroes do this thing that could be suboptimal? And if so, that's their choice. And if they can have extra fun doing that, might be something that I value in terms of I don't care if I lose utility, but I'm having fun doing it. And that's really the trade-off there. So I think it's a thing where, from our standpoint, we just want to see what people build and give our players more choices of what they could do with.
Yeah, so I actually completely agree. I just maybe want to nuance one more point that you made, and I'll actually leave the stage after that. Sorry for taking up that much time. Is the fact that when you said if we ensure that players in our original game always gain more for whatever they spend, whether it be stamina or HP or MP, I mean, whatever they spend, and they would gain more from the original game than from third parties, then I think that you're absolutely right in saying that there is no abuse possible. That's correct. But you've noted down in the notes I see that it would devalue their assets. If I could nuance that a little bit more, is that it's not necessarily devaluing their assets, but that it's not incentivizing players to go to the external parties, because a lot of optimization is already going on in DFK. And I believe that somehow the external parties, because they can give less of the same rewards that DFK can give, are either less optimal to start playing in, or they will have to start handing out additional rewards from their own native system, which would then gain some sort of value and start affecting the in-game economy. I think that was my point, but obviously this is an opinion and this could be wrong. I'm not a developer. I just am extremely bullish on this project, and I'm, for one, extremely happy that you did this community brainstorm, and I'm really looking forward to what this brings up in the future. So
Awesome.
I will be leaving the stage right now and making sure that other people have time as well.
I appreciate all of your thoughts there. Always very well out. Thanks for coming. Let's let some other people up. We do only have another 10 minutes or so before we're going to have to wrap this up, unfortunately. But Tertius, I think I'm saying that. You want to come on up? Or no, he went to the end. Maybe I can. Okay, there he is. Hey, Tertius.
Hey, I'm here. Thanks for having me up, and I really appreciate this AMA as well. I'll try and get to the point because I know we're running out of time. I guess the two biggest things that haven't been brought up were probably that if you have a second to maybe speak to some of the positives about the DFK Arena team, that you guys had a little more access to them. And I know that maybe that was probably Sunbear and some other people more so than you, but I think that would help some of us appreciate things that they bring that we haven't really seen from them, and then help us have a better idea of how to vote on this upcoming vote. And then I think I just make a quick note maybe to some of the knights and the people involved in the grant team. I had the impression a little bit early on in the thread that partially because you all had more access and more understanding of what this was and were pretty excited about it, that some of you were taking a defensive stance in support of DFK Arena, and it seemed like it wasn't as neutral as I may have hoped. And I think that may have led to some of the more heated discussion at the beginning. So it's just something to stay aware of, and maybe keep in mind that this kind of was dropped on the community a little bit in the last AMA. You guys were really excited about it, and a number of people, not knowing exactly what it was, had a bunch of concerns, and that's where a lot of that came in. Having some of the knights both be a little defensive of the proposal itself and not maybe at the same level as the rest of the community with knowledge, it led to just a perception of a tilt.
Yeah, no, those are great points. I think you hit the nail on the head there with communication is key. This is our first time doing this. And I think a lot of the issues that we saw come up with that could have been basically just attributed to the communication, that our team has seen some of the things that have been built by this third party for, I think, a couple months now, that they've been like saying, hey, we have this, that might be something that could qualify. So we've been working with them in terms of what their ideas are and providing feedback on that and saying that could be cool, but if you did it this way, that could be better. And so from our standpoint, we've seen that they've been willing to work with us, and they've been very open to feedback and changing their proposal to be something that would provide the most value to really. at the end of the day. That's, I think, what they're after there. I can't speak too much to that. Honestly, I haven't spent a lot of time personally with them, but I know that they have been like working our project as well. As far as the tone and things in those, as I said, this is our first, we're seeing what works and what doesn't work and improve it as we go. And I think having better communication from the start in terms of even just like the stuff that we're doing here with this community brainstorm is a step in that direction in terms of let's all get on this. Then we can talk about the stuff that we're all on the same page with instead of going in circles and having somebody talking about something that another person isn't really having as their context. So I think excellent feedback there, and we'll be improving the go.
Awesome, thanks. And I'll hop off and hopefully let somebody else talk for a second.
Thank you. It looks like we got a lot of people in line now. We're probably not going to be able to get to everyone, unfortunately, but is it Nouse or Noose? I'm not sure.
News. I got corrected. It's news, French.
Okay. I was going to say, it sounds French to me, but yeah, please come on up and we'll get you some questions. There he is. Hi, Noose. I think you're muted still, though. There you go.
I guess what I hear is a tension between what is really a planned economy and a very carefully modeled economy. And that's a lot of what makes DFK work. And then a sort of Wikipedia Creative Commons spirit. It's nice in theory, but actually doesn't work very well for projects like this, where the core of the value is in many ways the IP, right? So there's this concept of tragedy of the commons, right? That if you don't clearly assign property rights, then people will come along and overuse the resource. And essentially every grant recipient has an incentive to overuse the resource that is DFK IP. Right now, they may not think that they're going to do that. They may not think of it that way. But as Meta has said, they have an incentive unless they're fully subsidized, in which case they don't need to provide any kind of ROI for users. And I think that's the best model, frankly. But right, they have an incentive to draw people to their site. And if they can't do that through hero modifications, they'll do it through some other type of token or reward system that is effectively competing with a carefully modeled system. And they don't have the same vested interest in the long-term integrity of the DFK trademark, the goodwill associated with it. And actually, from a legal perspective, that could threaten the trademark itself. So there's a lot more at stake here than just let's have a flourishing ecosystem. It sounds nice in theory, but there's just a ton of empirical work showing that's not how it plays out in practice. And that's why with every successful IP franchise, even ones that have flourishing fan fiction communities, right, the stakes of the fan fiction are low. They can't affect the storylines of the main show. That would be the equivalent of having side projects for heroes to occupy owners in between quests. And if we're paying them, I don't know why that's not enough. Why do they need to make money off the project if they're being funded to create a diversion? It seems to me that there's only risk, as Meta says, and risk of types that haven't even really been explored here, including the integrity of the trademark, and no real benefit except a sort of vague desire for an open ecosystem that I think has generally failed and has certainly never been shown to integrate well with a carefully modeled planned economy like DFK is.
Okay, so there's a lot of points there. Some concerns over would third parties impact the controlled economy or the storyline or like the brand, and then what questions does that raise from a so those ones, like, I think they're good points. I think we need to think more about those. I don't really have a good answer right now, but I will say that I do see DFK as creating a new ecosystem and being a platform rather than being a fully controlled economy. Like, you look at Harmony approving grant to projects, I don't know, there's like a bunch of that they've like approved for, and these other projects are building things and have their own like tokenomics, and they're still earning money on their own as well. I don't think it necessarily has to be something where you have them choose one or the other, because it still provides value to the Harmony network itself as well. So I'm not sure that,
if there's one team of devs who can pioneer an approach to sort of hybridizing a planned economy model with a Creative Commons model, it's this team. But it's much more difficult than I think it's been presented as, and that's what concerns me.
Sure. I do appreciate that. But yeah, I think you've raised some really good points. It is tricky and it is difficult. And I think those are things we're going to have to iterate on and see what works and what doesn't, and measure twice and cut once. Like, these are the types of concerns we need to really fully vet out and address in terms of who owns the intellectual property for this project. That is actually a thing we have internally had a lot of like meetings about, because we have artists and things that are creating things. And at the end of the day, like, DFK is more akin to a DAO than anything else, where everyone who owns jewels has part ownership of the assets that are being created, like the lore and like the art and all that stuff. Our team is creating those, but we are doing it in service of the project. And we are basically signing over the intellectual rights to those to the project itself. And so it is an interesting like situation that hasn't really been done with a lot out there. So it's very new and we're trying to fill it out as we go. But this is excellent.
It's very interesting. The way you described it just now made me, as an intellectual property lawyer, shudder, because I would want to paper it all over and have it all laid out in advance. And I understand that devs can't really think that way, and lawyers tend to think about risk. At the same time, I do think that there's no reason to rush ahead to a project that can change anything having to do with heroes when we can start so much smaller as an experiment. And I think that is something pretty much everybody should be able to agree on. Anyway, that's where I'll stop.
Yeah, no, that's excellent points there. And I really do appreciate those. It sounds like we might be able to reach out to you and have some more, like, perhaps even consultation about some of these ideas and get some feedback on that too. So thank you.
Sure.
Probably have time. It's already over. I actually have another meeting I'm supposed to be in, but I can be a little late. Let's see if we can get Camus and then Tommy. Metes, I see you're in line again, but I think we're not going to have time probably for that. I'm sorry. And the same thing with Pump Skull, probably not either.
Hey, thanks for having me on stage. I did have 2 points, but in the light of time, I'm going to cut it back to just one, and I'm going to keep it quick. Just a general sort of observation of the process with this first grant. It felt like there was a lack of framework or process for the grant proposal review. It seemed to follow this sort of show the proposal, discuss it as a community, and then vote procedure. And I feel like that's too simplified of an approach for the community of our size. And the suggestion there might be to have a set of like general metrics that are presented to the community up front. And maybe that ties in what was reviewed by the DFK dev team up front, because we were missing a lot of that information of how did you guys evaluate their development team. Items like that maybe could be presented to the community. Maybe we'll have a standardized process, like a score for each one of these that then the community can review up front. Things like maybe a score of 0 to 100 on the team background, skills, and competency. Maybe give them a rating on what's their proposal to develop innovative new systems. What do we see in terms of their ability to reach an additional audience? So each one of those could be scored and graded, and then we could review all those different metrics. That might give us more to discuss and more to understand why it was selected before we get to the discussion. So I just wanted to voice the thought that maybe a more structured process would help the discussion.
Yeah, no, those are excellent points there. And I think you're right. At the start of the proposal, we did have like a 2-pager that we explained some of the reasons why I think we felt like their project was a good candidate. But I think it's for sure like one of those things that we can iterate on and improve on as we go. And having a scoring system like that sounds pretty cool to me. I'll see if we can figure out something like that in the future.
That'd be awesome. Thanks.
Yep. Tommy, and then I think that's it. Sorry for other people that are in the queue, but we're just out of time at this point.
You can hear me?
Yep.
First of all, Frisky, I'm a huge fan. Thank you so much for doing this. I'll be in Y'all will be in Barcelona, right?
Yep, I'm going to be there.
Great. I'm coming to look forward to meeting you guys. My question is really brief, and I don't know if I missed this. You said we've had over 50 proposals?
I believe so, and I could be mistaken. I heard a high number that was like high 30s, low 40s, and that was a month ago, so I'm assuming there's been more.
So I think the primary consideration, especially if the spirit of all this is to gauge what the community wants, I think it'd be really cool to make some of those proposals public. I don't know if they are already, because there's a lot of untapped potential as to like maybe the community really wants something that the devs aren't too excited about. Maybe there's a project that the devs want to do based on what the community is interested in, that the devs would want to pursue and take inspiration from proposals. So just implementing more And I do acknowledge that it's dangerous because you don't want to have a mob rule where we put a lot of pressure on you guys for a proposal that's ultimately unhealthy. But just making those proposals public and gauging what kind of interest is out there, I think could be really valuable for the community.
Yeah, I fully agree. Actually, very much in line with the original plan I had for this, where it was loosely modeled off of the way that like Harmony does it. And anyone can come and basically post a proposal, and then anyone from the community can say, oh, like this looks cool, or I have serious concerns with this, and just have them be a lot more involved from the start. I just got a note from Sunbear that we have actually 61 proposals, but yeah, so I would like to push for that. That was the original plan I had, where it would be very transparent and very open from the start. As you said, like we don't want to get into a situation where there's like a mob rule, but we are trying to be very decentralized. And if everybody wants something and our team has like serious concerns about it, then we can talk about that. But if everybody wants something, then there's probably a very good reason for that. And I think we need to listen more than talk in like those kinds of situations. So I think transparency is generally just really good to have. And I'm a fan of that.
So do you think there could be a path for those proposals being public in the near future? Or?
I think there should be. And I think this is the thing that I will bring up with our team and see what we can do in that. I can't make promises right now, directly control that program. That's Sunbear. From what I've heard from him, he wants this to be a thing that basically provides the most benefit to the community. That's the whole point of it. And I think anything that we can do that will increase trust and participation from them is a thing that we want to do.
Awesome. Last thing, very quick. Do you is there going to be a DeFi Kingdoms Day in Barcelona? Or
we're having a picnic that we're sponsoring in collaboration with the Avalanche team, but I think it's just a DFK sort of event where I think anyone can come and have some food and sit down and talk about all things DFK, I believe. Again, I'm not directly in charge of that. That's there he is, Risen. Hi, Risen. I probably said something wrong, so he's over here to say, no, that's not how it is.
It's all right. I waited for a second to see your answer. It's going to be on the 24th. We're specifically going to be outside the main auditorium. You guys can all stop by if you're there. We'll be around town the whole time, so it's not going to be hard to find us. Just look for the people in the DFK shirts. There's going to be plenty of us. But that is the main event where we're going to be doing things.
Do you have the times for that?
It should be around 1 o'clock. So it should be about 4 hours. So think 1 to 5.
Awesome. In the middle of siesta. So it'll be fun. I'm excited about it. Our team has, I think, 21 of us are going to be there, which is like the largest presence we've had at any event up until now. And there will also be like quite a lot of knights that are also going, as well as a bunch from the community as well. So there'll be a lot of us there. So come over, say hi.
Thanks so much, man.
Thank you. And so to wrap this up, I think this was really helpful. And I think this is a thing I'd like to do more in terms of let's sit down with the community and talk about ideas. And that's really what this is, just the idea that we're trying to figure out what to do and how to do it. And I have some like really good notes. We'll be like reviewing this as a team and essentially coming up with a good proposal about how these things could actually look, and then having the community provide their feedback on it and probably have a like governance vote about this as well. So stay tuned for that. And we will be figuring things out and coming